I was quite excited when I learned from Marcia about this workshop, because I think there's a lot to learn by understanding sex differences in cancer, and as you'll see throughout the day, there are a lot of sex differences in cancer. And I just wanted to start by providing the probably 6 slides of background for this workshop. The first one here is just a slide showing the sex differences. So the cancers that are on the left-hand side of that screen are the ones where women have a higher rate of cancer. So thyroid cancer would be the notable example. The sex-specific cancers are excluded for obvious reasons. The other cancers that are on the right-hand side of that screen are where the men tend to have a higher risk of cancer. And I'll just point out a few of those. So the thyroid cancer story is really interesting because it's increasing worldwide at rates higher than any other cancer, and it's mostly in women. And we don't know why. It's controversial as to whether that increase is mostly due to increased diagnosis or whether it's a change in the underlying disease. But whatever the underlying reason, physicians are seeing more and more women with thyroid cancer, and it presents some really interesting treatment dilemmas that Chris Holsinger will talk about later today. And then if you drill a little bit deeper than the data in that slide, adenocarcinoma of the lung in non-smokers is increasing very sharply worldwide, and that's particularly the case in non-smokers. So we're very interested in that arena. And you'll hear about lung cancer again later this afternoon from, I think it's Heather Wakely, right, this time. But if you look across the board, the general pattern is a clear increase in cancers for men, which I've listed for you there. And then if we go to the next slide, this is, so the first slide, many of those cancers we might explain by differences in known risk factors, smoking, alcohol, physical activity. In this slide, we've limited it to those cancers that are called completely enigmatic. There are about 9 or 10 of those cancers. And here's where we have these fairly strong differences, doubling in risk differences, and we have no idea why. And you notice there on the lower part, I don't know if I can quite, yeah, okay. So this is the thyroid cancer story, but everything else among the enigmatic cancers are higher in men. So that's one point. The other point to make is how that hasn't changed much over time. It's been a fairly consistent pattern, actually. So this isn't the result of something that's changed in 2005 that's driving these differences. They've been around for quite a long time, which I think is an important hint as to what might be going on. The other thing is the consistency of these patterns geographically. So this isn't just data from the SEER in the US, but if you look across the world where we've got registry data, basically what to note here, because it's color scheme, is that, whoops, the color is basically the same wherever we have the data. So the rates are about the same. Same thing here for laryngeal, if I can read that right. Is that stomach? I can't see it from here. But anyway, the pattern is the similarity in color. And then if we go to the next slide, it's thyroid. Again, generally similar, but we have these pockets that are really intriguing to us, like here, around Brazil and surrounding countries where there's a really big difference in thyroid cancer rates by men and women. And we're talking about actually mounting some studies here with colleagues at CPIC to try to find out what's happening there. So those are the differences in cancer incidence. The other question we're interested in is once you get cancer, are there differences in sex, by sex, in survival? And here they're not quite as striking. But I pulled out 2 examples that we'll be talking about today. So the very top example is breast cancer. Males get breast cancer about 1/100th the rate of women. And when they get breast cancer, they fare worse than women. And you'll hear an update on that from Mark Pegram very shortly. And then the most striking difference actually is melanoma. So women get it at higher rates, but adjusting for stage, grade, and thickness, men do worse with melanoma than women. It's the biggest sex difference in 5-year and 10-year survival rates. And you'll hear about that today from Susan Sweater and John Sun Wu, because it's a big interest of ours here. And then in terms of what might be driving this, clearly, people are looking in the big categories. There are genetic factors they're interested in that you'll hear about today. There are environmental factors that you'll hear about today. And then kind of the coalescing of those two with endogenous factors like hormones. And then if you drill a little bit deeper, most of the research, but not all of it, is focused on hormonal differences. That was the most obvious, but we don't want to stop there because there are a lot of other differences worth considering. There's a lot of interest in immunological differences between men and women. You'll hear about some of that today from John Sun Wu. Epigenetics is becoming a really hot area in sex differences. Some really, really interesting results emerging and in the pipeline about that. And then those are all coalescing around this concept of resilience. You know, are women simply more resilient to most health challenges? And my belief is probably that's the case, because women have to put up with men their entire lives. So it's like they must be more resilient. But we'll learn a little bit about that today as well. So with that, I really look forward to hearing the speakers and to introducing our keynote speaker, Malcolm Pike. So Malcolm is currently an attending epidemiologist, full professor at Memorial Sloan Kettering. Prior to that, he was professor and chair for a period of time in the Department of Preventive Medicine at USC, where I had the pleasure of interacting with him quite a lot and really enjoyed those days. And prior to that, he was at Oxford, where he worked with Sir Richard Dahl and others in the heyday of cancer epidemiology at Oxford. It was really the hotbed of thinking. And he's one of the world's leaders in the epidemiology of women's cancers and the role of hormones. And I would say, simply said, he's one of the best thinkers in the field. And his talks are always interesting, always informative, and sometimes deliberately provocative. So I really enjoy his talks. So with no further ado, Malcolm.